Welcome to episode 19 of the Civil War Breakfast Club. I am Darren Weeks, and on this National Short Person Day, I am, as always, joined by my vertically challenged co-host from the North, Mary Fincher. Good evening, Mary. How are you tonight? On this special day, you're sitting on your phone books right now, sitting right up on that computer. I'm sure you are.
Yep.
Oh, we had some fun with that today, didn't we?
No, it was a lot of fun on Twitter during that National Short Person Day. But the other important thing about today, besides it being for people who are vertically challenged, such as myself, I shouldn't say vertically challenged, as you say, fun-sized, right? Fun-sized. Phil Sheridan was apparently fun-sized.
Absolutely fun-sized. Absolutely was.
As was George McClellan as well. But no, there's another reason we're here tonight, and it's to do with General Sherman. And that is because we are doing our part 2 of the March to the Sea. And there's a very special anniversary today that we are recording on.
It certainly is. It certainly is. As I shut off my phone to avoid scorn from the North, since I'm going to take care of that. And it is off. Okay, let the record show my phone is now off. There was an incident recently. Anyway, so today is a special day. And are we going to get to the special day now? We're going to save it till the end of our story.
Well, I guess we could save it till the end of our story.
I mean, it's about the story. I mean,
it is, yes. But it is to do with Sherman's March to the Sea, December 22nd.
Sherman's March to the Sea.
1864.
It was. Right. It just seems like yesterday. So how's before we get started, we had a good Facebook Live, a really good one on Saturday.
We did, yep.
A lot of people jumped on, a lot of our friends on, new friends. We announced our book club, which we are going to talk more about later, which we might have some book titles we're going to throw at some people tonight.
Yep.
And overall, it was a lot of fun. I think we had a good, fun Christmas episode as we sit here on this Tuesday night. It's Christmas. Santa's loading up his sleigh full of good toys for naughty, nice people like me and coal for naughty people like you. And they're going to be basically dropping this on Saturday, the day after Christmas. So everybody will know if their stockings are full or if they have some repenting to do for 2021. So we will all find it. We will all find out. We'll find out together.
Or as Saturday is known as Canada, Boxing Day. Which is why
Day.
I have Monday off work, because Boxing Day falls on the Saturday. So I have Monday off work.
Okay, well, enjoy your Boxing Day. We have a lot of fun with that. Before we get started, we got to do our own tradition, though, our own Boxing Day, sort of, which is announce the libations for the evening.
Exactly. Yes.
So we'll go by height. So I'll go first. So I am drinking Knockabout Midnight Pumpkin. I'm drinking it because there's a moon on it. And we like moons around here because of Oliver Otis Howard. And obviously, I'm drinking it out of my William T. Sherman I Dream of a Brighter Atlanta coffee mug because it applies to what we're talking about this evening.
Nice. Well, I am drinking Hazy Sunset, which is a New England IPA. And I chose New England IPA to start off with because Oliver Otis Howard is involved in this March to the Sea, and he is from New England.
Well, if we drink too much of this, we'll be doing our March to the P. So we better get rolling with this story and going with that. So basically, when we were talking about battles, we were talking about Fredericksburg, we were talking about Franklin and stuff like that. But before we did that, we kind of did a tease. This is a really good idea by you, Mayor, which was start the Sherman's March. I know. Start with the Sherman's March and then kind of take a break until he comes out around now, which is
Let
right
me write
around
that
when he did.
down the day, Darren.
It's okay.
I had a really good idea.
It's okay. We'll just edit that out.
Write
No
that.
We'll just, I'll do the editing this week. I'll tell you. I'll take care of that.
My phone's not, or my watch is not coming on to ask me what it needs to be from mine.
Yeah, that's going to remind me at some point. That was pretty funny. But we're going to talk again, going back to the beginning, Sherman's March. Now, Sherman's March, we'll talk real quick. We'll do the highlights of the overall, where we got to our point before. November 15th, 1864, Sherman begins his march from Atlanta. He is going to march through the state of Georgia, heading to Savannah. Now, no one's going to know where he's going, pretty much except him. Even Lincoln isn't sure where the heck he's going to be going at this point. More importantly, the Confederates don't know what the story is. So John Bell Hood, who has been basically petitioned to help nip at the heels of Sherman, decides he's going to go to Nashville. And he's going to take Nathan Bedford Forrest with him as his chief cavalry guy. So right off the bat, he's weakening the Confederacy. So William Hardee is going to basically be left with Joseph Wheeler, his cavalry, along with the brigade of a guy named William Jackson. And he's also going to have the departments of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. A lot of older, elderly. You know what, though, Mary? We've been saying elderly men until I looked at it. They were 40.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they call elderly men.
Yep.
Just in case you and I want to feel a little bit older.
Yeah,
so, you
no,
know,
that definitely. Yeah,
we'd be elderly people fighting the wars. Just okay. But most,
I would be 2 years away from being elderly.
Oh, well, you're pretty, it's Canadian, but the Canadian exchange rate puts you a little lower.
And my math skills maybe are a little bit.
Yeah, that's probably true. But again, they're going to have about 13,000 guys going up against 65,000 guys. So Sherman is going to basically take two of his armies, Army of the Tennessee, which is going to be on the right wing. Mm-hmm. They're going to be led by
Oliver Otis Howard.
He's going to be there. He's also going to have two armies under his command, two corps rather, the 15th Corps under Peter Osterhaus, who we met at Chattanooga. We didn't meet him, but we talked about him. Mm-hmm. And the 17th Corps, which is by Frank Blair. We'll talk about their division guys as the show goes on here with the story. On his left wing, led by Henry Slocum, it'll be the Army of Georgia, which is the 14th Corps by Jefferson C. Davis, no relation, and the 20th Corps by Alpheus Williams. Again, we'll talk their division guys. They'll have Judson Kilpatrick with them, about 5,000 cavalry guys, who's going to protect both wings. So basically what you have is a land shock, right? Yep. Moving across, they're going to meet at Milledgeville, which is the capital of Georgia at the time. And really what they're going to do, and we'll talk more in detail as this goes on, they're going to really lay surge to Georgia.
Yeah, it's not just battles, it's psychological warfare too. And it's basically making it so that the South doesn't want to make war on them. And the total distance from Atlanta to Savannah is 300 miles, or for the Canadians listening to the show, 480 kilometers.
Okay, that sounds longer that way. But basically, when Sherman does leave Atlanta, 30 to 40% of the city is completely burnt. A lot of it's by Hood himself, but a lot of it's by Sherman. They're taking out all the military supply places. But what Sherman wants, he's been going on this whole attitude for a while now, where he wants to basically scare the hell out of the Confederates. He wants to do a couple of different things. He wants to destroy their supplies, their factories, their ability to make war. And what he wants to do is he wants to scare the shit out of the citizens, because what he really wants is he wants those soldiers who are fighting with Lee in Virginia, who around this time are dealing with Grant, to sit there and go, my family is home in Georgia with this psychotic Sherman burning down farms. I got to go home for my family. So he's trying to weaken them by doing that. It's a real good job of it, actually, as this thing goes on. And as we go throughout the story, we'll talk about this psychological war, really on Southern morale, to really terrorize the minds of these citizens, to really create fear among that entire part of the country. Yeah,
and as you said, it does work. And so where we left off with you last time was they were at Milledgeville, and which is not really the halfway point, but this is where the march does begin to change. So the first part of the march, like, Sherman is very hands off. He's letting Howard and Slocum kind of do their own thing. They just know that they have to get to Milledgeville. And I think it's Howard is fainting towards, is it Augusta?
He's fainting towards Augusta.
Yep, he's fainting towards Augusta to make the Confederates think he's headed there. And then Slocum is fainting towards, Macon, that's right. Thank you. And they're trying to make the Confederates think that they're, going to head there. Anyway, they meet up at Milledgeville, and they're only there for a day. But this is where the march starts to change a little bit, and Sherman becomes more hands-on with it in giving more detailed orders to his wing commanders, as well as to Kilpatrick, as to what he wants the cavalry to do.
Yeah. I'm going to say, just throw some dates at you here. So this is the 23rd of November, which is when this is going on. So this is when they're about to leave Milledgeville. So he's been going about 9 days. But again, to recap a little bit about this, what's important about this is Sherman's got no supply lines, right? So he's cut the telegraph to D.C., so they can't reach him. He can't reach them. Really, no one knows where he's going. But this is really what the risk is, okay? He's basically going across enemy country with no supply lines. And he's benefited sort of because he has that census map we talked about where he knows exactly where he's going to go because he's been there before, knows the ins and outs of Georgia. But he's going to have to live off the land. It's going to be 30,000 tons of food a day for these two armies to go across this. They've got no home court advantage. They're going to have to go and they're going to have to forage, which is going to be really one of the lasting images of Sherman's March to the Sea is what he does to feed his army.
Yep, the bummers, which they are today known as the bummers, but in many of the accounts of the soldiers that were on the march, they don't call them the bummers during the march. That name actually doesn't come about until Milledgeville, when Dr. Edward A. Duncan, who is marching with the right wing, he writes, "Damn the bummers, they are always bumming around when they are not wanted." And from there, the name started to take off like wildfire, and they started to be more commonly referred to as the bummers. Mm-hmm. But as I said, in contemporary accounts, they're not really referred to as that. So this is kind of like something that has become like a legend of the March to the Sea is the term bummers was not there from the start. They were just simply called the foragers.
Yeah, if you're looking at hats, these Civil War hats, you'll see forage hats. Sometimes you'll see bummer hats. They're really the same kind of thing. But basically, it's these people are the ones who were going out, and they were going by an order called Special Order 120, which we talked about last time, which is basically Sherman was giving the rules of how to do this. There were specific rules about certain buildings that could be burned, certain ones that couldn't be burned, and he kind of looked the other way a lot of this stuff. But as he starts marching, and one of the stories that's going to be consistently throughout this march is going to be the slaves, right? So as they start marching, they're finally going to start moving. Just to jump ahead a little bit, they're going to finish this up right around almost exactly today, which is maybe an anniversary day. We kind of hinted at maybe perhaps, but who knows? We'll find out. Anyway, so basically what is they're going to start marching and from Milledgeville, and they're going to be doing their thing. They're going to be nipped by Joseph Wheeler the entire way. He's going to try to take shots at him. But these new freed slaves are going to be there. And for a lot of the people in these armies, this is the first time they've really seen slaves. And what I mean by slaves, too, is the horror of slaves. They're going to see slaves with whip scars. They're going to see a lot of that stuff. They're going to see mulatto children for the first time. They're going to see a lot of the dark side of the slavery, this American Civil War. And it's going to piss them off, to be honest. Yeah. You're going to see them really be friends and be friendly with these people, including William Sherman. Now, William Sherman, we're going to talk about this in a little while. He's no friend of the Negro race, they called back then. He saw them, in his words, in his quotes, as in a transitional state of humanity, which is kind of a crappy thing to say. But there's what he's basically, in his mind, they're not fully human, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. And but then you have, Slocum and Howard, who are his wing commanders, who are abolitionists. Right. Howard was raised with, I think it was the son of an escaped slave, was one of his good friends throughout life, and was one of the reasons why he was Howard was ahead of his time in the way he thought,
They were. He was in, New England. I don't know if he's an abolitionist, but he probably was. As far as the attitude goes,
I think he would be classified as an abolitionist. Yeah. Slocum definitely was, and I think.
But he wasn't a Robert Gould Shaw or a Greeley or those. But he was certainly of that mindset. He wasn't like these other guys. Sherman, like I said, not an abolitionist. But the thing about him with this was interesting was he loved seeing them on the march. He would shake their hands. He would smile with them. He just didn't like them as a whole, but he liked them individually, right? For whatever reason.
Yeah, he treated them, I think he treated them for the most part with kindness, but there were times when he said, you're better to stay here at the plantation, especially if it was a mother with young children, because the thing about the march is they needed the food to feed the soldiers that are on the march. And if you're carrying a lot of these refugees as they came to be known, it's going to start to slow you down. And as we're going to talk about in a little while, there is something that happens, which is that.
What he wants young, strong Black men to be pioneers. So he's going to go there and say, listen, you want to come with us? You can. You're going to help build roads. Okay. We're going to give you food for your labor. That's how we're going to feed you. But just so you know, you're never going to fight. But I'll take you, but only if you are physically able to do it and strong. What he doesn't want women. doesn't want children, doesn't want anybody, invalids, old. But that's what he's going to get, though. What's going to happen is he's going to have these people following him because they're following him to freedom. They want to get away from what they knew, which was that slave world. So they're walking with the Yankees. Again, these people, these women, these children, they're begging for food off the soldiers, which we're going to show later on as food kind of runs out when it gets later in the calendar year. But it's going to be a real hassle for for Sherman and the Army. But for these soldiers, I mean, they were shocked at the condition of these people. I mean, just absolutely shocked in just overall the position they were in. But Sherman, he's friendly with them. He's trying to get, they're trying to get these people to get away, but they're still coming. But you're talking about trying to manage a 60,000 man army. How you're going to do it all? But basically, he's going to end up marching along. He'd be very popular with his soldiers. We've talked about this, the Uncle Billy thing. Hey, Uncle Billy, how are you, Uncle Billy? And he loves the nickname, and he's waving, having a great time with the soldiers. And I think that's the Sherman that a lot of people recognize from that name. We call Uncle Blingy. We talk about
Uncle Blingy because of the California Gold Rush.
But again, it's what's going on with this is that it's really causing an issue as this goes on. Because one thing he has, we mentioned before, the supply lines. We're going from late November into early December where it's getting cold. The food is running out. And we'll jump ahead real quick, but by the time they finally get outside of Savannah, these guys are eating rice because there's no other food. Everything is stripped. It's gone. And now you've got thousands and thousands of slaves who are basically begging for food. It's slowing them down. And the other thing that they're dealing with too, we'll get to when we talk later on, is the cavalry's Joseph Wheeler, who's still taking shots at them and just being like a fly, a gnat. And there's be some battles we're going to talk about here in a second where he actually represents himself pretty well. But that's the stage. So you got these, these basically four corps, these two armies, led by Sherman, basically with Slocum and Howard, racing to get to Savannah. Because they want to get to Savannah, they want to meet up with the Navy, get supplied by the Navy, and begin to decide what they're going to do next, which is ultimately going to be going through the Carolinas and chasing Joseph Johnson.
And the other reason too to mention about that the food becomes more scarce, it's not just because of that you're getting later and into winter. It's because that this route that they're on, the closer they get to the sea, the sandier the soil, the harder it is to grow certain items that they had been living off of to begin the march with. And what Sherman does with deciding the route of the march is absolutely brilliant. He's taken the census records from 1860, I believe it was, and he's looked at the richest areas of agriculture. And that's exactly where he is cutting this gigantic land shock through Georgia. Is through this area. But as Darren said, they were living off rice at the end, like near the end of it, as they approached Savannah. And there was soldiers that wrote in their diaries like, oh, we're having rice again. And it would be like they would go to eat the rice and it would be so gritty to eat because of the sand, like from the soil. It would just be like the sand would get mixed in with it. So it was just, so they were having to they had almost like an abundance of food to begin with, but then near the end, they are struggling to find the food. And I think Sherman knew that was going to happen, but it was a risk that he had to take because he knew it would happen so close to Savannah that they would be okay in the end.
And the other thing that Sherman's doing, Mayor, is he's destroying the railroads as he goes.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's doing this because what he really wants to do is he wants to really disrupt the Confederate supply line.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can make all the gunpowder and bombs you want. If you can't deliver it anywhere, you're screwed, right? That's the way it is. Kind of like mailing a package to Canada that takes 6 months to get, by the way. Different story, Mary. They must have destroyed the rail lines between Goderich and Cape Cod, but that's another story. But you know what? Cavalry arrived today, Mayor. It arrived today.
Yep, it arrived.
Finally did. It arrived today. So,
speaking of cavalry, that's one of the first. So 3 days out from Milledgeville, November 28th, there's the Battle of Buckhead Creek, which is a cavalry engagement. And a lot of these battles, like we talked in the first episode of the Battle of Griswoldville, which was infantry. But the battles that happen, and they're relatively small engagements that happen in this second part of the March to Sea, like post Milledgeville, is they're primarily the cavalry battles with Kilpatrick and between Kilpatrick and Wheeler.
So real quick, tell us about Joseph Wheeler. He's a West Point guy, kind of a prick, admittedly. He is.
Little.
He called himself War Child, Mary. He would jump on his horse and he would say, "The War Child rides tonight." That's what he tells me.
This is clearly a dude that wants to be either Nathan Bedford Forrest or
right.
fucking Diva Stewart.
I mean, would it kill me if you call me War Child once in a while? That's all I'm trying to say, But
you want me to call you War Child?
No. Come on, man, the War Child rides tonight. Can you imagine the arrogance, jumping in the car, going to the 4 score? Come on, War Child rides. But that's what he called himself. I mean, you must have been like, all right, War Child, we're going. But he was very pro-slavery, just a tough dude. But I think to your point, he looked in the mirror and I think he saw Nathan Bedford Forrest. I think he really did.
Yeah.
But he was a hard-fighting guy. And to your point, he's going to nip away at him. You mentioned the Battle of Buckhead Creek. We'll talk about. And this is when he's actually going to be more aggressive against Kilpatrick.
He definitely is, and Kilpatrick actually nearly gets captured here. But what this is Kilpatrick is on a bit of a mission. So he's on a mission to, rip the shit out of the railways, but he's also going to liberate Camp Lawton, which is a prison camp, Union soldiers. But when they get there, it's been
But before we get to Fort Lawn, we mentioned Kilpatrick, mentioned being a little over aggressive. He almost gets his ass captured, Mary.
Oh, he does. Yes, he does.
I mean, he almost does. He basically, if it wasn't for the 5th Ohio, the cavalry, got to give credit to Ohio where credit is due, I suppose. But he basically, under a guy named Thomas Heath, not to be confused with Heth, Mary.
This guy's name was spelled Heath.
I know. So you know what? It must be Heth. It must be pronounced.
It must be pronounced Heth. The A must be silence.
So the 5th Cavalry is going to, 5th Ohio is going to basically attack Wheeler with canisters. He's really going to push him back. It's going to ultimately be a pretty substantial defeat for the Confederates. They lose about 600 guys versus like 50 U.S. guys. So it's pretty minimal for the U.S. But again, this is Kilpatrick consistently waving that, swatting that fly of Joseph Wheeler away, and Wheeler will not go away. And you mentioned the next step, which is going to be Lawton. But before that, though, just a couple of days later, going into early December now, Kilpatrick gets a little bit of revenge, though, in a place called the Battle of Waynesboro, right? Mm-hmm. So Waynesboro, basically, Kilpatrick's going to pound Wheeler. This time he's going to really get him good. What this is going to do, it really is going to help clear that path for Sherman to begin his approach to Savannah, right?
It's very significant, I think, when I was doing my research for this. It's very significant in terms of the March to the Sea, and it's something that doesn't get discussed a lot. When you look at the March to the Sea, it sometimes seems it's like Atlanta, Milledgeville, Savannah, maybe a little bit about McAllister. And Kilpatrick's role doesn't really get discussed. And Kilpatrick is one of these guys who, I mean, he's got a reputation and it's not good. He does not shine in the Eastern Theater, but as you and I were talking about this morning, nobody ever mentions him on the Gettysburg Retreat, and that he actually did really well there. Does not do well on July the 3rd, but he does well in the retreat part of it.
Yeah, he has that Kill Cavalry nickname, which, it is somewhat earned. I mean, there was that incident with Elon Farnsworth, but shit happens, right? But you know what, though? We talked before about a lot of these guys like Howard and these other dudes. He has a chance to redeem himself. He does a really strong job. I mean, we're going to jump off topic real quick. In Monterey Pass at the Gettysburg escape. And for the most part, Mayor, on this March to the Sea, he does pretty well.
He does.
He covers both flanks, covers both armies. He basically is dealing with Joseph Wheeler. Wheeler's got a pretty good size cavalry. And he basically is finally looking to finish him off at Waynesboro because he's got to get rid of him. He has to, So he's going to take Kilpatrick is finally going to say enough of this. He's going to take his entire division along with 2 brigades under Absalom Baird from the 14th Corps. Is that XIV, Mary? Is that 14?
Fucker.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, so Kilpatrick is going to go find Wheeler. He's going to go, let's go find him. He's basically going to get him. Wheeler's going to be behind barricades, going to be in a strong defensive position, but he's finally going to get driven back. This is going to be the Battle of Waynesboro. He's going to get ready Wheeler to finally withdraw and basically send the War Child off into the night, which is ultimately what he's going to do here.
The War Child gets spanked.
War Child, ooh. Poor child gets spanked, got punished. But you know what? But this is going to clear the road now for Sherman because now there's really no opposition. Yeah, it's kind of like that scene in Star Wars and finally blow up the Death Star. Okay, blow it, kid. No one's around you. Shoots and blows it up. That's what
Yep,
it was. He's got
exactly.
no one else to worry about. And then we got to talk about Lawton.
Yes, we do have to talk about Lawton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Lawton was a Union prison camp, and when they came, they were going to go liberate it. And when they came upon it, it had been abandoned. But they saw the conditions the men were living in. They saw corpses there. And for those Union soldiers that came upon it, it threw them into just like it was anger, which rightly so, right? Like you're seeing these conditions your fellow soldiers are
yeah,
have been living in, and there's a nearby town called Millen.
yeah. So when they get there and they find this situation, it's heavily defended. It's just a strong place, but they're all gone. The first thing the soldiers see is a gigantic dirt pile with a sign that says "You 650 federal bodies." That's the sign they see. And they're like, "Are you shitting me?" Because this is the first time they've seen this. Because Andersonville was a different part. They haven't seen this yet. Then they go into a warehouse. They find 3 more bodies that are waiting to get buried that have been there a while. So they bury these bodies, and these guys are enraged now. So this is Kilpatrick and those guys. They're like, "Fuck this. Let's find the nearest town." They find Millen, Georgia, and they just burn it to the friggin' ground out of pure rage. And you have to imagine some of those stories you'd see at these World War II camps, Auschwitz, and these places, as the U.S. and these other national forces liberated them, the anger, right? They just start shooting people. But this is what they experienced, right? You find, and they hadn't seen this before, but you have to imagine, I mean, how mad they were. And this is Sherman now, that mindset, which is basically, if you have the opportunity to really destroy something militarily or something like that, take them out. And they didn't have to think twice about it. They took them right out.
Exactly. Yep. But it's incidents like that unfortunately are why in historical memory the march is seen like they're basically looking at these men as like, oh, look at these men coming in, they just like burned our town. It's like, meanwhile it's done in a rage, and they're finding 650 bodies buried. And the whole purpose of this mission for Kilpatrick, not just to rip the shit out of the railways, but to liberate this camp.
I mean, take out any military factories, anything you can that's going to disrupt the Confederate,
Yeah.
the Confederate war effort. I mean, they're doing all this Sherman's necktie stuff. The Army's all the way across, so they're burning the rails and melting them and all that stuff. But this was personal, though. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and while this is going on, Sherman, his infantry is marching, okay? And this is when you start seeing some of the other things the Confederates were doing to slow them down, which was the torpedoes.
Yes.
Right.
And yeah, they were. And actually, the other thing they had started doing too was they had started burning stuff ahead of them.
Yeah.
And Sherman
Yep.
was like, "Okay, if you're gonna fuck with me like that, then guess what?"
He's like, "Wait, do I smell fire?"
Yeah. He's like, "Ooh."
He's probably like, "Ooh, nice."
Yep.
But
But yeah, the
but
torpedoes, as you
the
said.
torpedoes was a big deal because it hadn't been done before, and this was still at a time when it was almost like gentlemanly war. It was outside of the war. You fought like a man. This is why they hated sharpshooters, Mary. The Verdun
Mm-hmm.
sharpshooters and they still, even to this day. I mean, Vietnam, those wars. If you caught a sharpshooter, you killed him because you didn't look a man in the face and you shot at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this was. So they're marching along these dirt roads, and these things are starting to go off. And Sherman is beside himself. So what does he do? He's going to force the Confederate prisoners of war he's caught to either march first or dig these things up, which is what he does.
Yeah.
And the Rebs get pissed. And then basically there's one story where he says, here's the deal. He says, he tells the Rebs to go ahead and start digging these things up. And he writes a note and gives it to one of them and goes, go find Hardy. Okay, or go find Wheeler and give him this note. And it basically says, if you ever do this shit again, we're going to start executing your people because this is absolutely unacceptable. And you know what happened? They stopped.
Yeah. Well, and Sherman, like what had happened is it was on December the 8th that there was one specific incident where he was like, some men had been riding ahead of him and he came across one of these men that his horse had been killed by the torpedo, but he'd lost the lower half of his leg. And Sherman witnessing that, like he wrote in his memoirs, he was like, this was not war, but murder. And it made me very angry. And again, it goes back to, the whole, like, if you're going to fight me, fucking face me. Don't do this kind of stuff, And and Sherman, he takes these Confederate prisoners and he makes them dig up the torpedoes. And of
Mhm.
it, in his memoirs, he wrote, "I could hardly help but laugh at their stepping so gingerly along the road." So even Sherman here is making it a little bit personal. And I think for some of us to read that in the 21st century, we might think, whoa, he's being like, it's harsh. Like it's almost like, well, this is not how you, in 21st century mind, this is not how you do war. But to
Mhm.
him, you know, where he was in 1864, this was how he felt you waged war. You had to face each
Yeah.
other
And
and do it that way.
the other thing that pissed him off was, basically Joseph Wheeler basically put bounties on these bummers, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't soldiers; these were thieves. That's how he saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So they came across 11 bummers with their throats slit
Yep.
on the side of the road, and Sherman at that point says, "We're gonna start executing these people because that's it. That's it. We're done." And so of all the negative Sherman stuff you hear about the March of the Sea and burning this and burning that, the Rebs are no angels with this. I mean, they were doing
No.
what they had to do in their mind was whatever it could to slow them down. Because don't forget, you had 13,000 guys with older people and basically boys and some cavalry, and that's on Jefferson Davis, Mary. That's all he had because he had Hood going to Nashville
Oh
instead
yeah,
of
he was
fighting Sherman,
bleeding men by that point,
right?
and like they were deserting. And the other thing too is like when you're looking at the March to the Sea, there is so much lost cause that factors into it. There's of course, the accounts written by the people that went through it are going to seem like, oh my God, they're burning all of my state, because that's the kind of, the kind of slant they're going to put on it. But when you have to look at it from both sides, like, yeah, there's bad shit happening on both sides. There was a few bummers that did stuff
Yeah,
that are reason
right.
why there's the reputation. But at the same time, Wheeler slitting the throats,
Yeah.
that's murder, right?
Yeah, I mean, and Hancock, who was one of his aide de camp, would write his diary about some
Yeah.
of the stuff he saw that Union was doing. That was no picnic. But Sherman had that quote. He goes, "I didn't start this." He goes, "But damn, I'm going to finish this."
Hmm.
He saw this march as a way to end the war, and
Yeah.
he proved out to be relatively prophetic because that's pretty much exactly what happened. But he was going to do what it took. Now, he didn't really wage war on the citizens. He really didn't. There's a
No.
lot of misconceptions, but he did take out anything that was basically going to hurt the Union cause. There's a story about how they came upon a factory, a bunch of women, and
Yeah.
they destroyed the factory, made the they took the women, sent them to Indiana of all places. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
that's where they sent them to. And so, okay, that's where they went. So, but again, it's just what happens. But as this goes on, um, you have more and more of this slave issue that's happening out of the Union. Because as you're going further east or southeast, I guess theoretically, you're going through the deep South. You're talking about specific slave areas, and you're getting more and more of this caravan, right, of slaves that are following them
Yeah.
along. So you're going to basically have this army that's trying to get as fast as they possibly can into the Savannah area, but you're having these slaves follow them, and it's completely slowing the army down.
And
And so
that's where we come to Ebenezer Creek.
we get to the Ebenezer Creek, which is December 9th, 1864. Now, we're going to talk about this for a few minutes because this is one of those things that no one looks good here, okay? And this is something that comes out of this that people still talk about. And we got to talk about Jefferson C. Davis, okay? Jefferson C. Davis is going to be, he's going to basically be the guy who's going to kind of get ultimately blamed for all this. So for the most part, what he's going to do is he is going to, first of all, Jefferson C. Davis, real quick about him. He's a pro-slavery Northerner.
Oh,
Okay,
absolutely.
he is not he's not somebody who is going to endear himself to the Lord Garrisons of the world. Okay, he's not.
Talking about a guy that literally got away with murder, as we discussed last week in our Christmas episode. And then, as you said earlier when we were talking, I think earlier this week, he's like a Barksdale, as you discussed. He's no better than Barksdale, who fights for the Confederates with how he feels about slaves. I believe he's from Kentucky as well.
And he just doesn't like the blacks. He doesn't. I mean, he's fighting for the Union, but again, he is irritated as hell. These slaves are slowing the army down, and he's mad. They're begging for food. And we mentioned before they're approaching Savannah, so the weather's getting colder, so there's less food. That we talk about eating all the rice, and then basically, he's also still dealing with Wheeler's cavalry. Okay, he's still dealing with all them, but he wants to stay ahead of them because he knows there's a schedule they have to keep, and they want to keep moving to 15 miles a day, 10 miles a day. Yeah. So they got to stay ahead of Wheeler, but this army is slowing them down. Okay, so they get to a place called Ebenezer Creek, okay, which is about 20 miles outside of Savannah. It's 156 feet wide, and it's 10 feet deep. Now, this is December 9th, so it's cold, okay? Davis sees this as an opportunity to finally ditch these people. You know when you're out with friends and they're annoying you and you say, okay, I know how I'm going to ditch this guy. I know how, right?
Yeah.
You probably do it all the time, probably. But this is his opportunity. Now, his own soldiers, you know what his nickname was for his soldiers called him because of his attitude was General Reb. That's what his nickname was.
That's okay? Just, and a few days before that, he'd issued that order because of how much he felt the slaves were slowing him down. But it had definitely it's like, you are racist undertones sort of thing.
He is, and he's coming. I'm sorry, again.
Oh, he's every additional mouth consumes food, is what he said in this order. So no refugees will be allowed in the wagons, and none but the servants of mounted officers on horses or mules. He specifically singles out women and children in this order. And he's clearly, as you said, he's not an abolitionist at all. They're calling him General Reb. But this order is what he issues. And I think it's part of the reason he justifies what we're going to discuss are his actions at Ebenezer Creek.
Now, just a little background on him. We talked about him on the Christmas Spectacular, Mary. He's a guy who killed his superior, Major General William Nelson, in 1862 at that Cincinnati hotel. Yeah. Okay. He was never charged because that's how he rolled, apparently. So, as the 14th Corps, okay, is approaching this creek, this Jefferson C. Davis. So he's got Baird, he's got William Carlin, and he's got James Morgan. As they approach, he has some of the 14th Corps guys hold them back. Now, what he tells the slaves is, we think there's sharpshooters that are going to shoot at you guys as you cross the pontoons. So stay back, let the army go first to make sure it's safe. That's what he told them, okay? So he has a lot of the 14th guys hold them back. Now, he tells them it's for their own, quote, their own safety, right? Because Wheeler may attack the bridge, apparently. Wait for all the troops to cross, and let's get the wagons across, and then basically we'll take you guys last. So, but they waited patiently. They had no reason to think they were going to get double crossed. This is exactly what happened. And then basically the orders are at that point, once the wagons are across and all the soldiers are going to take up the pontoons and not let any of the slaves cross. There's a guy in the 126th Illinois Cavalry by the name of Charles Kerr, okay? And he has a quote, "The order was obeyed to the letter. I sat upon my horse and witnessed a scene like I pray I may never see again in my life." And basically about 5,000 slaves, mostly women, children, older people, are left behind. Wheeler is going to start to catch up to them. He's going to start basically dealing with them. You have these women and these children begging, "Please take us across, please, please, please." You got those stories where many jumped in, tried to swim across, and they drowned. There's the story where Kerr talks about seeing a woman drown holding her infant crossing the river. Yeah, I mean it's really bad.
It's absolutely horrific, and I don't care if it's 1864. What he did there is it's horrible.
Well, what he did pissed a lot of people off, north, south, east, and west. Kerr, the guy I just mentioned, his comments pissed off Jefferson C. Davis tremendously. Yeah. Okay. And Kerr had to defend his words. Basically, he went to his superior, a guy named James Connolly. Yes. Who would go ahead and write a letter and leak it to the press about what happened.
And Stanton got wind of it too.
Stanton got it, who just had a birthday, Mary. Just had a birthday, Edward Stanton.
He did. Happy
birthday, Edward Stanton. So, he's going to, we're going to jump forward. We're going to jump in the wave forward machine here in a second and talk about this real quick. But Stanton's going to come to Savannah and see what the scoop is. Halleck gets involved, your buddy Halleck, and he's gonna write to Sherman, because now the media's killing these guys. So Halleck writes to Sherman. He says, "They say you almost have a criminal dislike to the Negro, that you drove them from your ranks, prevented their following you by cutting their bridge, and caused a massacre of large numbers of Wheeler's cavalry." That's what Halleck writes to Sherman. So Sherman's okay. So Stanton basically, now we're jumping ahead a little bit, but just finish up the story in Evergreen Creek. Stanton's going to arrive in January 1865, January 11th, and it's going to annoy Sherman. Sherman basically says, "Look, don't jump to conclusions." Basically, the story in the memoirs, Mary, of Sherman, he writes, quote, "I explained the matter to Sherman, and Sherman was entirely set to his entire into Stanton's entire satisfaction." That's what he says. Okay, sure, okay. And then in true Sherman fashion, he goes ahead and he blames Stanton afterwards for kowtowing to the radical Republican, these anti-slavery people. And he writes again in his memoirs, "We all felt sympathy for these poor Negroes, but a sympathy of a different sort from that of Mr. Stanton, who was not of pure humanity, but of only politics." So what he's saying is, hey, I felt bad for these guys. You didn't, because you're only trying to satisfy the media up there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so he's really doing some pushback with Stanton there.
And then Sherman writes that letter to his wife.
Yeah.
And he says, "Mr. Stanton was here and is cured of all that Negro nonsense."
It's just, it's so personal between the two of them. And they and the one thing that, what James Conley writes about Jeff C. Davis is that he refers to him as an infernal copperhead.
Mm-hmm.
So Conley is hating what he's seeing here. And he says, like, it's entirely too much for my democracy. So that's why he writes Stanton, is he's like, what I'm seeing here is very inhumane. And you have to wonder, if others on the march felt that same way, considering the two wing commanders are the exact opposite to what General Reb is here, Have
you been called infernal, Mary? That infernal Mary. I don't think I've
ever. By you.
No, that sounds like a big word.
Is that one of those 4-syllable words that you struggle?
Those 4-syllable words like push you down the undulation, watch you go on those rolling hills. But yeah, perhaps. But at the end of the day, the government is going to dismiss this whole Ebenezer Creek fiasco as a military necessity. No one gets reprimanded.
Davis never has to account for his. Davis does not. And Sherman basically turns a blind eye to it. And
this is something, again, when you got to look at it from military necessity, just, forget the humanity of it all, right? These people were slowing him down and he had to get there. But there comes a point when you've got to realize they're people. Sherman had a chance to do something with Andersonville, really didn't, right? This is a case. But Sherman, in his defense, is tunnel visioned on his goal, right? And anything that's going to slow his goal down, he's going to basically just simply dismiss. Now, did he obviously know about what was going to happen? He probably didn't know what was happening, but I'm sure as hell he wasn't heartbroken about it, because it ultimately is going to lead to him the next day getting on the outskirts of Savannah. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk more about that. But he's going to basically, after Ebenezer, he's going to finally slow down this, quote, anchor that's been slowing him down. That's going to allow him to proceed. And he's almost there. He can basically smell it. But again, the Ebenezer Creek thing is one is going to be one of those moments in American history that it just looks bad on everybody's part.
Yeah,
it's
one I find when it comes to the march. It's not, sometimes it's kind of glossed over because people don't want to deal with the controversy of it. But, it is also referred to as the Ebenezer Creek Massacre, which I think in many ways it is, because of, if this order that Jefferson C. Davis has put out before, where he's basically saying, I don't want these people with me, they're slowing me down. And then just what he does with the 14th Corps with having them go, oh, don't worry, we'll get you across, but we got to let the soldiers cross first because we think there might be sharpshooters. It's like, it was clearly set up to rid himself of what he saw as a dead weight.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, and it was eating all food, like the monster feed thing you said, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Well,
at
that's what
this
was in these
point,
specific orders that he
yeah.
issued.
And at this point, food is becoming rare, and he has no supply line. He knows if he can get to Savannah, he's going to open this. He's going to open up the Navy. He's going to get all the supplies, and he's got it. He knows he's got it if that happens. So military necessity, I guess. I mean, it is what it is. It probably did ultimately save lives, but it's one of those things that just stinks. It just smells bad. It just smells. But,
Yeah.
The Confederates capturing these people in Wheeler and taking them back to slavery.
They took them back to slavery. So also, who knows how many lives were lost because of that? And the ones, but there were some that made it across. Like they managed to make it across. They didn't all drown. But the point is like, you know, most of them didn't, and it's just part of the march that. This is definitely a dark part of the March to the Sea.
156 feet is a long way in December to swim there. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
With little legs of yours, you can swim that far. But that's a tough one. But it but still though, again, it's you get the Rebs looking bad for these poor people thought they'd escape bondage. Now they're back again. People willing to rather die than be slaves again. Yep. This is really that to your point, a very ugly part of American history.
Yeah.
But you move on from it, and that's what the military did, and it's just one of those things you don't hear a lot about. When you hear about Sherman, you hear about his aggressiveness, you hear about the fire, all that stuff. And you know what? If the old saying "the buck stops here" is true, then you got to blame Sherman. You got to blame Sherman for it. You have to.
Absolutely, because he doesn't say anything about it, and just how he kind of turns it back around on Stanton, and he had to know about those orders that Davis issued. You know, and the thing is like Davis was under the left wing, so he's under Slocum, who's an abolitionist. I wonder if he somehow managed to slide them by Slocum, because I can't see Slocum being like, this is not cool, you know.
I mean, it's you know what, you never know. I mean, Slocum's one of those guys. He's one of those doesn't bring upon emotion one way or the other. He's
he doesn't. No, he's very quiet in history. Honestly, you know, especially with the March to the Sea. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm glad we decided to talk about it tonight, you know, have a good discussion about it. And I'm sure we'll bring it up on the live as well.
Oh yeah, it's such a happy topic. We'll definitely talk about this. nothing but bring people down on a Saturday morning. Remember that time?
What time anyway.
The harvester of sorrow, Fincher. Anyway.
Fucker.
You can call anything you want. I'm right about this one. Anywho, all right. So December 10th. Okay, they're on the outskirts. So now we're talking about your boy, O. Howard.
Yeah, Fort McAllister.
Fort McAllister. He's going to take Hayes' division of the 15th Corps, which I think XV is 15. Just saying.
Yes,
okay?
Yes, it is.
So why don't we talk a little bit about Fort McAllister, Mayor?
Yeah. Well, Howard issues Special Orders number 193 on December 12th, 1864, which are as follows. As soon as King's Bridge is completed, Major General Osterhaus, commanding the 15th Corps, will direct his 2nd Division, General Hazen commanding, to proceed against Fort McAllister to take it. Signed, O. Howard. So he is the one that issues these orders.
So, and it's funny, I know why you're mentioning that, because Sherman's going to take credit for this.
He does.
This victory, and you're setting up the whole Howard victory. And you're right. Okay, you are, but I see what you're doing. You can't fool me here. Okay, I know what you're thinking.
Well, okay? It's funny. Howard just kind of mentions it. He mentions it casually in his memoirs. He's like, Sherman does take credit for this, but I just want to say that it was me.
So while General Sherman was worried about this whole fiasco with Ebenezer, and I quote, I was putting on my Superman suit outside of Fort McAllister, getting ready to defeat single-handedly the battle.
Literally single-handedly.
Literally single-handedly. He picked right up on that, huh? Yeah. So, but you're right, though. I mean, Hazen based on, now this Fort McAllister is a very heavy defended fort.
It is.
It's got dirt around it to absorb artillery. Doesn't take long, though. It takes less than 15, 20 minutes to basically take it. And you got that story with O. Howard standing up there on the hill there watching with Sherman.
Yeah.
And Sherman is excited because he knows this is the last domino fall. And they're talking about it like they're watching the Patriot game.
Exactly. Yeah. You know? And like O was kind of like, yep. And Sherman is more like, like, he's very enthusiastic. Sherman's very extroverted, and he's like, there they go grandly, not a waver. See the flag in the advance, Howard, how steadily it moves, not a man falters. So he's all excited about it, right? But meanwhile, these men are in this one part of the ditch. They do encounter torpedoes again, and there's
Right.
really horrific accounts of, like, men that like survive that part, but just like the man behind them would get taken out by a torpedo, and just there would be like nothing left of him, or he would lose part of his leg or whatever. So there is some difficulty in taking this fort, but as you said, it does not take long to take McAllister.
No, they lost about 130 guys in McAllister. Most of them were by those landmines or torpedoes. Hardy did what he could to slow them down by flooding the roads. As you know, the road being flooded can definitely cause issues. But it was mostly the torpedoes that did that. But to your point, they took care of that. And once they took Fort McAllister down, they were able to open the back door to Savannah, which, as I say that out loud, sounds horrible. Actually,
it does actually.
but that's anyway. That's what they did.
So that's where we're going today. The back door of Savannah. Poor Savannah. But then so Sherman is watching this unfold with Howard. He tells Slocum, I think it's probably via the wigwag, the flags. Darren's losing his mind right now.
Oh God, it's the unintentional stuff. It's so funny.
But anyway, he tells Slocum, I think it's via wigwag, which is their kind of signal system they use with the flags. He says, "I've got Savannah. Take a good big drink, a long breath, and then yell like the devil."
Poor Savannah.
Yeah, poor Savannah.
But anyway, wow. Okay. So anyhow, now with
as I said, he's told Slocum about it.
So now with McAllister being done, that's really the last piece of the puzzle for Sherman. Now he's at a clear path. So at this point, you're going to start to see within a week, December 20th is going to come. You're going to see Hardy is basically he can either surrender or he can try to escape. He chooses to try to escape, which is what I would do too. So he crosses the Savannah River on these pontoon bridges. They leave it by a guy named Richard Arnold, who's the mayor of Savannah. He's going to have to surrender the city. He basically makes a deal with Sherman, says, look, we'll surrender the city. No problem. You do what the hell you want. Just please don't burn it, and please don't hurt our citizens.
Yeah.
And Sherman must have run out of matches because he's like, all right, fine, whatever.
We're done.
We're good.
And he'd already, Sherman had written Stanton on December the 13th and said he considers Savannah already gained. So he knew that once he had McAllister, it was only a matter of time until he had Savannah. And luckily, I think it's on December the 20th, you said Hardy vacates the dance floor.
He does. And so basically, he's basically out. So Sherman's eventually going to slowly ease his way in. And he's going to be a couple of days later on December 22nd. You're embarrassing the children, Mary. December 22nd, basically, he's going to write his famous telegraph. He's going to tell Abraham Lincoln where he is and what he's done.
Yep.
And I know you love this quote.
I do. I beg to present you as a Christmas gift the city of Savannah with 150 heavy guns and plenty of ammunition, also about 25,000 bales of cotton, which is probably the greatest Christmas gift ever received, but it is written in Sherman's very theatrical way. Lincoln will respond on December the 26th, which is when this episode will drop. So somehow the stars align perfectly. Maybe it's to do with Saturn and Venus right now aligning perfectly, that we were able to record this on the anniversary of the famous.
That was Saturn and Jupiter.
Oh, fuck, it is.
We'll just edit that right out.
Jesus.
But you know what, though? People don't talk about Lincoln's response back.
No, but I have it here to read.
Okay, well, you can read the whole paragraph? Okay,
yeah.
back yourself up.
Is that okay?
You do what you want. I'm just going to sit here and think about poor Savannah.
Poor Savannah. Yeah, that won't become an inside joke.
No, not at all.
Poor Savannah. My aunt and uncle have a dog named Savannah, by the way.
Oh, really?
They
Oh, that's pretty
do.
cool. Oh,
Yep.
Okay, well, so apologies to the Savannah dog family.
um, so Lincoln says, many, many thanks for your Christmas gift, the capture of Savannah. When you were leaving Atlanta for the Atlantic coast, I was anxious, if not fearful. But feeling that you were the better judge of remembering nothing risked, nothing gained, I did not interfere. Now the undertaking being a success, the honor is all yours, for I believe none of us went further than to acquiesce. So this is a very similar letter that, as I'm sure we're going to talk about in 2021 when we talk about Vicksburg, that Lincoln sends to Grant.
You know what? This is an important paragraph, and it's one of the most important ones you'll read because it is a complete 180 from Lincoln's McClellan days. Okay,
Oh,
so
it is.
He finishes that quote, and he says basically, "But what is next? I suppose it'll be safer if I leave General Grant and yourself to decide. Please make my grateful acknowledgments to your whole army officers and men." So you know what he's saying here? You know what? You do it. I'm done. I'm not going to interfere anymore. I'm not going to like this is what he did with McClellan, with Meade, with you name Hooker, all of them, you know? And so now he sees what Sherman did and he says, okay, if I stay out of this, this is what they can do. So you know what? I'm staying out. And he finally learns not to meddle, which is a big, big thing. This paragraph, the many, many thanks in your Christmas gift paragraph quote from Lincoln is astounding for someone like McClellan to read. He must have sat there and said, are you shitting me? Really? But you know what, though? Good for Lincoln, though, because he finally realized, let the generals be generals. And he realized that this was an issue that was going on the entire war. But he finally realized if I find the right people, put them in the right place, and let them do their thing and don't meddle, you know, Ebenezer Creek notwithstanding, because you have to deal with that politically, but he was able to sit there militarily and realize, okay, they can do it. I'm going to stay out. And he did for the rest of the war.
Yeah. Well, you got to wonder, though, if he's remembering back to Reynolds, who by this point has been gone for over a year, you know, if he's remembering when Reynolds said, are you going to meddle? And Lincoln's like, well, you know, and Reynolds like, fuck that to commanding, you know.
Well, I think he realized he finally found people he can trust. You know, he had Grant in the east at this point doing overland. He's in Petersburg and he's doing his thing. He's being aggressive. Yeah, they're taking big, brutally losses at places like Cold Harbor, losing a lot of guys. But he's keeping Lee on his heels and he's pushing. Now he's got Sherman in the west, who's basically cutting the soul out of the Confederacy, taking their soul, their will to fight, the whole thing. And he realizes, okay, now this is something, and it puts a guy like Jefferson Davis in a really, really bad situation now, because he knows we've said before, after Vicksburg, this war was basically over. After Atlanta, it was certainly over.
Yeah.
But they had to know now that this was done. Now the vice is really tightening, and they're done.
Well, I think the fact that Hardy just leaves, and that's what he tells Beauregard, is he's like, dude, I got to evacuate the dance floor. We can't do this. We got to do it without a fight. You know, I think Hardy is realizing we can't have any more men killed. And if we just let Sherman have this city, it's going to end sooner. And I think it did. You know, if they had put up a fight, more men would have died. Who knows what would have happened, you know? And it's probably a good thing that Hardy did leave. That was probably a good decision on his part. It helped to hasten the end of the war.
Well, if Hardy didn't leave, he would have had to really defend the city of Savannah or the outskirts. He would have got Savannah blown up. He would have lost almost all of his guys. He knew he had no chance. You still had 60,000, probably about mid-50s, because they did lose guys along the way to Sherman's guys. But you still had probably 50,000 plus fighting-ready guys.
Yeah.
And they didn't have much left. And Hardy is no... You know, he's not stupid, and at this point, some of these guys who are point we talked about one of our previous podcasts, some of these guys knew this was over. They knew it was done.
I think Hardy knew it was with Franklin, because with Franklin, he got word that Patrick Cleburne was one of his best friends. He's found out one of his best friends is gone, and he's probably seeing the casualty list. You know, not only is Cleburne gone, but all those other officers that were killed at Franklin. And he's like, how many more? Yeah. You know, and I think he was just. Let's let's try and start to end this.
No, that's it. To win a war, it's a mathematical equation. Okay, it's when will times might. When that mathematical multiplication formula equals 0, you lose. So you make one of those others 0. So the Confederates still had weaponry, but by Sherman's march, he was taking their will away. It's what Lee wanted to do in the North when he went into Pennsylvania, when he went into Maryland.
Yeah, exactly.
So now what he did was basically take away the will to fight in the South. And basically, at the end of the day, what you have is you got soldiers who don't want to fight anymore. You've got diminishing returns on weaponry, and that was basically it. So this, the Sherman's March of the Sea was basically the nail in the coffin of the Confederacy. They were dead anyway. The body was gone, but this was the final nail in the coffin. And when you look at how history looks back on Sherman now, it depends on where you're from, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you're from Georgia, if you're from the South, the March to the Sea, you would swear all of Georgia was burning. And just, some of the accounts of it and just the way it's seen today it's still very much a lost cause thing.
Well, it's funny with some of the, even today, some of the biggest offenders of the South are Northerners, right?
They are.
And one of the most vicious quotes I found I was looking for quotes to describe the March to the Sea, and the most vicious one I found came from a Northern guy by the name of White Claw Reed is his name.
Oh, okay? I've heard of him.
Okay. So he was an editor of the New York Tribune with Horace Greeley, right?
Yep.
He wrote, "It was the most monstrous barbarity of the barbarous march," he called it. So he was basically saying, even though this March to the Sea ultimately expedited the end of the war and by definition saved a lot of lives, it was barbarous how they did it.
Yep.
Because you know what? It was a different – this was when you saw warfare changing, when you saw the Napoleonic style of warfare going away. This is when you talked about taking the souls out of civilians and burning public places and entrenching and doing a lot of the shit you saw later on in future wars. This is the direction it was going. So it was that transition of just human warfare. But again, people in the North are mortified. And I still think people like McClellan, those types, not him personally, they still wanted to win, but they wanted to let the South down slowly, right? And what Sherman did was take his total war, which is what his whole concept was. He learned that from Jomini at West Point and he kept with it. But to basically take that and beg the Confederacy at that point to quit. And that's ultimately what happened. But, some asshole, Mary, was in Atlanta a couple of years ago wearing a Sherman t-shirt, okay? And was at the bars running his mouth about Sherman. We'll leave that person alone.
Hey, been there, done that at a winery.
Yeah, okay. But it's funny when you talk with the people down there because most of them don't care. Most of them hate Tom Brady more than they hate, when it comes to Sherman. But they all agree and they all tell stories of everything, how their farms were destroyed, and their family was this and that. And it's all perception at that point.
Most of the time it's, you'll meet somebody and they'll be like, Sherman burned my great-great-great-grandfather's barn and farm. And you find out they were 100 miles even removed from where the bummers were. So there's no way that could happen. I was at the General Grant birthplace in Ohio a few years ago, and I went in for the tour, and on the tour with me were an elderly couple and their granddaughter from Georgia, and they saw my Sherman phone case, which I had at the time, and she, especially the woman, was not like, she didn't want anything to do with me. And of course the tour guide was like, "Oh, I love Sherman because he saved Grant." Like, they held each other up, and like, of course the couple from Georgia's like, "The fuck?" And finally the guy said, from Georgia, he's like, "He burned my ancestors' entire farm." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I'm like, "I don't want to do this today."
Oh, I would have taken that bait all day. You kidding me? I wouldn't
no,
have fun with
and
that.
I was like, "And where was it?" And he's like, "Well, it was on the march." I'm like, "Okay, so you can't tell me an exact location?" And
it was in Macon. Oh, he was? You mean where he
really?
was? But what's funny was, I know we're not gonna go all the way follow up for the Carolinas, but Sherman, what he would do is he would continue his march. Ultimately, he would go through South Carolina, right? He would burn South Carolina. He would feint towards Charleston. Everyone thought he was going to Charleston. There's rumors why he didn't go to Charleston, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
There's stories that he might have had a girlfriend there. There's also a rumor that the mayor of Charleston was a Freemason, and he begged him not to burn the city. So who knows? So he ultimately goes to Columbia, and he torches Columbia, which is where the University of South Carolina is now. And if you go there, and I've been there, Mayor, I was there on Chicken and Ribs Day, exactly how it sounds. and some of the buildings, like the City Hall, the state capitol, you can still see cannonball holes, and it's some stuff. But he's going to punish South Carolina. He's going to become basically a demon in South Carolina. But then he's going to get to North Carolina, and he's going to give a break a little bit, because he's reminded how North Carolina really didn't want to secede, that they barely became secessionary agents. So he kind of let him off a little bit. Obviously, he's going to meet up eventually to put the vice on Lee, which is going to ultimately lead to Appomattox. He's going to go ahead and eventually catch Joseph Johnston on the same day that John Wilkes Booth was killed, ironically. Same exact day. But again, what Sherman did was he really expedited the war to be ended. He really did.
He did. And once he does get to Savannah, though, like, he's not going to lay waste to it. The citizens have rations brought in for them.
I think poor Savannah's been through enough, Mary.
Yeah, poor Savannah's been through enough. With Sherman knocking on the back door. Anyways, he's not, and he stays at a very wealthy gentleman's house while he's there. As we said, Stanton comes to see him over the whole issue with Ebenezer Creek and how the former slaves are being treated and all that. And he's going to stay there for the month of January. But the one thing that Sherman says of the march from Atlanta to Savannah is that he only regards it as a shift of base. So he's just transferring a strong army, which had no opponent and had finished its work. So he's seeing it as just like, we were just out foraging and shifting base. That's how he's seeing it. He regards the Columbia, the Carolinas campaign as being the far more important part of the end of the war. And that's what he says in his memoirs. But he basically says that the historical memory, and he's writing this, in his own time, the historical memory is what has made the march what it is. That the march was made out to be more than what he thought it would be, which was just a shift of base, basically. He saw the second part of it, this march, which we're going to cover in an episode in 2021, the Carolinas campaign, as being the far more important and decisive maneuver.
Well, the whole point of it, people talk about he's going to go burn everything, but really it was to connect to Savannah so he can resupply with the Navy. That's really that's the whole point of what it was. And so, so shifting base, that's a good way to put it. And we'll talk about that. But what it basically did is it destroyed all the rails going through Georgia. It really ended the supply lines. So the Confederacy really had no way to transport anything, whether it be food, whether it be weapons, whether it be anything. So they were really put in a situation where the writing was on the wall. It had been for a while at that point. But anybody who wanted to continue to perpetuate this war, it was just unnecessary death at this point. We saw with Franklin a couple of weeks ago that what's going to happen with this. But as he gets into Carolina and as Grant continues his overland campaign going through, Spotsylvania, Yellow Tavern, and just Petersburg, it's going to ultimately put the screws to Lee now. Johnson's army was there too, but it was really Lee. That was the one they really wanted. And then you started to, not to jump ahead of the story here, Lee's going to have to leave and head towards Appomattox because he needs to connect with them for supplies because he can't feed his army anymore. And so you saw the supplies, the cutting the supply lines directly impacts the end of that army. Because once you can't supply, once you can't feed, once you can't arm, what do you got? You got
Nothing. And Sherman, in his after action report of the March to Sea, so from Atlanta to Savannah, he is going to say that in 1864 dollars, he caused $100 million in damage. In our dollars today in 2020, this is 1.6 billion. that he causes.
Which we call that Fincher money.
Yes.
So much it costs to mail something to Canada.
It does. Yeah. Yes. Try mailing from Canada to the United States, and then having delays.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Cracker Line was open in the mill, though.
Yeah. Today it finally opened.
Finally arrived. The Eagle landed today. But anyway, so I think that's an important lesson we talk about. I think doing the March of the Sea in 2 parts really tells a story, because it really talks about if he can do it, to I think I can do it, to yes, we can do it, and the ramifications afterwards. Yep. So I think at the end of the day, is Sherman a hero in the North? Yes. Is he a villain in the South? Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's never going to change. And, I know we're going to talk about books here in a second, but Confederates in the Attic talks a little bit about the Sherman myth in the South to this day. And someday we'll do that on our book club. But, Mary, we have other books we got to talk about before we could talk about Confederate.
We do, and one of them does have to do, obviously, we'll get to in a second, with the March in memory. But the other thing I wanted to say about the March to Sea is this is definitely something that we can come back and revisit, in future episodes. There are other aspects that could definitely be discussed. But as a segue into our book club, I think we will be discussing them sooner rather than later, maybe.
I think so. Do you want to do a little book club real quick?
Yeah. So just quickly, we are going to have a book club in 2021. We are going to read 4 books throughout the year. And we're going to have, at the end of each quarter, we're going to have a Zoom meeting just to get together and discuss the books and talk about how we thought about them. And if you would like to sign up for the book club, you can email us at civilwarbreakfastclub@gmail.com.
New email forthcoming, by the way.
Yes,
we'll
exactly.
Talk about that down the road.
Yep, we will.
Down the road. So let's talk about the book. So we know that we're starting off, and we already announced this, with Black Iron Mercy, a historical, basically a historical novel by Eric Schleinlein, I believe his last name is pronounced. Yes. So I think a lot of people sign up for that, and I see a lot of people say they've gotten the book. It's a book about the Iron Brigade. It's a fictional/non-fictional character named Arliss, who is going to be a Wisconsin soldier who's going to take him through Antietam, through Gettysburg. It's a really good read, so we're going to be doing that. We'll be doing a Zoom meeting, to Mary's point, at the end of March. So a lot of people signed up for that, Mary. A lot of people. There's a big crowd for that one.
Yeah.
We're going to have to have a bouncer at the door with this crowd coming in. So
that's awesome.
So we'll be doing that. And what about our second book?
Our second book is going to be Through the Heart of Dixie, Sherman's March in American Memory by Dr. Anne Sarah Rubin. And that's a good book, as it says, about historical memory and what it has to do with Sherman's March. And that's one of the reasons why we were thinking originally of having this as a 3-part about Sherman's March. But then when we decided to do the book for our book club, we're like, we don't have to do that because we'll be discussing it when we read that book.
Do you know someone just bought me that book, Mary? I just got that.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah.
Someone just got that in the mail. I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know.
So we'll
Did Savannah get it for you?
Savannah's had a tough time. I don't know. We'll see. So we'll see if Savannah's mentioned in that book. I don't know. I bet she will be. Anyway, a third book is going to be by our friend Dr. Kate Larson, which is going to be about John Wilkes Booth and more importantly, Mary Surratt, the great Mary Surratt, called Assassin's Accomplice. It is one of our favorite books, Mary, we've talked about, which talks about Mary Surratt and the Lincoln assassination. So we'll be doing Dr. Kate's book, who's a fantastic person, a great writer. And like I said, one of our favorite books. I think people are going to really, really enjoy that one. We're going to basically be tweeting all these books Saturday, Mary?
Yep, we'll tweet them. So everything's going to drop Saturday because that's when we're going to drop all this information.
Okay. And so we'll get that. What about that fourth book? Because you laugh at me for some reason.
The fourth book is going to be Lee's Retreat by Kent Masterson Brown.
Another great book, which I enabled you on, actually.
Yeah, which I have not read yet. I have not read it all the way through yet. So,
well, there's a lot of 4-syllable words, Mary. A lot of 4 syllables.
Ooh.
A lot of undulations going through those
rolling hills.
Rolling hills. Monterey, 3-syllable word. But speaking of Judson Kilpatrick, it talks a lot about him. We talked about him tonight. And anybody who reads that book or who has already or who will get a little bit more of appreciation for him and what he did too. So basically, Black Iron Mercy, we're going to be doing right off the bat. The book by Dr. Rubin, which was
Through the Heart of Dixie.
Through the Heart of Dixie. We're going to do Assassin's Accomplice, and then we're going to do the book on Lee's Retreat. So I think that's going to be it, and we'll do more throughout going forward. But that's the 4 we're going to pick for now. And yeah, I think those are perfect books to do this way. I think people are going to love those books.
Yeah,
and I think we'll have a lot of fun with that.
Definitely will.
So what's coming down the pike, Mare? Besides Santa Claus coming down the chimney for next couple nights.
So we will be doing our Facebook Live at 10 o'clock on Saturday, December the 26th, which, you might be listening to this before or after. If you listened to it after and joined us, thank you. So in January, we are going to be having a guest at the end of the month. But before that, we are going to be talking next week. We're going to be talking Murfreesboro or Stones River.
Yeah, let's do Stones River. Let's do that one instead.
Let's do Murfreesboro.
Are we going to talk about our guests? We're just going to leave that alone.
Let's leave that one. It's a little bit of a surprise.
Just so you know, it's not Shelby Foote. He couldn't make it. All right, so we'll leave that alone. But so we have our Facebook Live on Saturday, which, like you just said, we're going to have a lot of fun with that. And I think people will be in a festive mood. Hopefully, the people who didn't get coal, which at least one of us anyway, we'll be doing that. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. So definitely jump on with that. And Stones River next week, and Murfreesboro will be fun. It's nice to get back into battles again. It was fun doing the Christmas one. Admittedly, it was.
Yeah, it was. But I love the battles.
But it definitely is. So, and then we'll prepare for our next roundtable down the pike again, third Wednesday in January.
Yep.
So I think that's enough for now, Mary. I think we did enough damage for one day. I think we did enough damage. I think we made Georgia and Savannah howl.
Apparently.
I think so. So we will, and so I think the epitaph of this one again is, Sherman, say what you will about him, but his actions did expedite the end of the war. They just did. So,
and too, when you're looking at the March to the Sea, don't just look at it as something that is like Atlanta, Milledgeville, Savannah. Take a look at those little battles that happen as well, like Griswoldville, the cavalry engagements with Kilpatrick, especially Ebenezer Creek. And do a deep dive on that because it is really worth looking at. But also look at Fort McAllister. As short of a battle as it is, it's still very interesting to study. And, each of these are stepping stones to Sherman getting to Atlanta. It wasn't as simple as marching and foraging as well. And also look at, so a great book about this, which Darren is currently reading, and I'm actually almost finished it. Southern Storm by Noah Andre Trudeau. Excellent source on the March to the Sea. He covers a lot of the soldiers' diaries, very balanced view of Sherman and the whole march. So highly recommend that book as well about it.
Yeah, definitely. So great book. I would agree. I'm currently reading that as well. You've been reading this. It's going to take longer than Sherman to get across the march. If you'd read this book. This has been going since May for you with this book, actually.
Yeah, because I have like 5 other fucking books on the go. So
okay, fine. I'll be that way. Anyway, so I guess again, thanks to everybody who listened to this. Again, it's a great time. Already episode 19. Wow, we're looking at 20 pretty soon there.
Yep. And hope everybody had a great Christmas.
Hope Santa Claus treated you well. St. Nicholas, et cetera, et cetera.
And I guess we have to say Happy New Year because after this, our next episode that drops, episode 20, will be on January the 2nd.
Oh, I'm gonna miss 2020, Mary.
Yeah, me too. Actually, a lot of good happening.
Yeah, they're definitely positives.
There's definitely some positives to 2020.
Yeah, might have been.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, so I think this has been a great episode. So again, great time, Mary, as always. Great to see you on this. So we will catch up with everybody soon. So again, live on Saturday. Hopefully, when this drops, we'll be seeing you at 10 o'clock in the morning. Whether you're listening to this late Friday night or early Saturday morning, whenever the Dairy Queen of Kincardine decides to post this, which is going to be late Friday night, which will be Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holiday season. Hope you have a safe and wonderful holiday. And we will look forward to seeing you, as we say, on the other side as we put a bow on Sherman's March to the Sea.
See y'all later.
Hey.
Yeah. Bye.